Warning: the Not Real Art podcast is intended for creative audiences only. The Not Real Art podcast celebrates creativity and creative culture worldwide. It contains material that is fresh, fun, and inspiring and is not suitable for boring old art snobs. Now, let's get started and enjoy the show.
Greetings and salutations, my fellow artists. Welcome to Not Real Art, the podcast that celebrates contemporary creative culture worldwide. I'm your host, Sourdough, and on today's episode, I'm honored to be joined by a multi-talented artist who paints beautiful works of art, but also designs and builds contemporary high-end homes for which he has been critically acclaimed. My good friend, the one and only Linc Thelen of Linc Thelen Art and Design. Hey, Linc.
How you doing there, Scott?
Sourdough, my friend. Sourdough.
Sourdough.
So it's good to see you here at Art Basel.
It's great to see you, and it's great spending some time here, our second year in a row together here at Art Basel.
It's getting better each year. Third year is going to be a charm.
Yeah, now we have, our second year, we're really finding our foothold of navigating through Miami and the show.
Yeah, so for our listeners who aren't here at Art Basel Miami 2019, what do you tell them what you think? What do you think about Art Basel this year?
I guess maybe some people who haven't been here wouldn't know how many different shows there are.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Throughout Art Basel and different events from Untitled to Scope to Context, Art Miami, Art Basel itself, Pulse, and each one of those venues, offering a different arrangement of artists. Yes. And quality of art. So
say nothing about all the smaller satellite shows that are happening in hotel lobbies and, cafes and any number of other places.
Yeah, this is the biggest show, in the country, this year, and everyone looks forward to coming out here to be part of it.
Now, you have about 10 paintings showing this year?
Yes, I do have 10
How many
paintings.
years have you been showing at Art Basel?
So this is the second year showing. So, I show worldwide now. I show from Hong Kong, Germany, London. Established.
Those are different galleries in those markets?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So I'm with a London gallery and a New York gallery.
Okay. Shout out to those galleries. Which galleries?
I'm currently with Cube Gallery in London and Michelle Mareed Gallery in New York and Soho.
And they're both here at Art Basel.
They're both
showing your work.
Correct.
Yeah. And you've got some red dots, do you not?
Yes. So far, it's been good. Sold about half the painting so far. And, tomorrow's a promising day. We have a lot of people coming back.
Yeah, it's not over yet.
Nope.
Yeah. And you sold through last year too, right?
Yeah. Yep. Last year was a really good show. I sold just about every piece. And, that's tough to do. You just hope, I think with the galleries and artists in mind, we come here to try to get away, be in the warm weather, try to break even. So it's, there's a lot of competition. So it's a plus being able to be on top every year coming out of here.
Yeah. I mean, in all candor, depending on what show you're at, it feels like there's, a sea of sameness sometimes, a lot of the same stuff, but quite frankly, and I'm not saying this because you're sitting in front of me, but, your work's pretty damn distinctive. Like I haven't seen work like yours here. Like it's pretty unique.
Yeah. I've kind of been fortunate to find a path in the art that is unique. I am a painter, so studied classically, but with the abstract painting, I've kind of came up with my own techniques that's not subject driven. It's basically driven by technique.
So what was your journey as an artist? Did you study art in college? Were you formally trained?
Yes. I studied both architecture and art. And so I had a lot of the formalities of classical art and design. And I studied under a professor who actually was a minimalist artist, which would be surprisingly different from what I actually wanted to be creating at that time. And I think what I took from him is how to learn how to see.
How to see.
So how to interpret things and how to see and understand your reactions to things and understand why you're doing things.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember the moment when it clicked for you and you said to yourself, okay, now I get it. Now I'm seeing differently or I'm seeing better?
Yeah, I think it's taken probably 20 years.
Right. It's a process.
It's a process of understanding. You keep experimenting. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, yeah, I get it. I don't have to, I'm I'm searching within the art, but I'm not searching of why I'm doing it anymore. I found my place.
Why are you doing it?
Why am I doing it? I like to create. I like to be creative. I like to be passionate. I like to create an environment that's free. And painting allows me to explore those ideas. I'm a dreamer, so I get to dream within the art. So I'm creating art that reflects hope, dream, happiness. So that's what I do. I try to experiment within the painting to create that atmosphere.
Yeah, well, I can, say my impression of your work is that it exudes positive energy, which, might sound like a sort of general statement, but I feel good around your art.
Yeah, I want people to be happy. It's just what I want that. That's how I know when a painting's finished. If it's calming, relaxing, has good competition, or composition, has a nice push and pull, and then the use of materials is used well. So
well, and you have the kind of unique, skill set to not just be able to create paintings that people can have in their homes, but because of your architecture background, your building background, you can actually design and build the homes that your paintings are in that, people feel good inside their homes because you helped also design and build their homes.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, touch on that. Yeah, I design, build these 5,000-6,000 square foot homes that are very more towards the more minimal approach, but
yes.
The approach is somewhat the same as what I do on canvas. It's trying to create a composition, the use of materials, creating content within the architecture that people have to think and question. So that's what I try to do in the homes, is have people, question why you did something, bring up the materials, the importance of those things, how they react to each other.
So do you think your architecture clients hire you because of your aesthetic and they want your aesthetic, or are they hiring you to realize their aesthetic, or some combination in between?
I've been fortunate they hire me to do my thing. They try not to get in the way, hire me to create them kind of my vision. And hopefully, it's usually we have somewhat the same vision. So obviously they don't know how to carry that vision out, which I do, but they usually allow me to take reins. And like my recent client now, she actually she teaches and handles all the fundraising for the School of Music in Chicago. And they interviewed a bunch of different architects and builders, and that's why she chose to go with us, is because of our aesthetic and having the artful background that we'd be sensitive to.
Well, there is a consistent narrative to your portfolio, right? I mean, I have had a chance to obviously see your work over the years and be aware of your design career, both in architecture, but then also in your art. And, looking at your work over many years, it feels like there's definitely a consistent narrative in there. I mean, your vision, your voice, if you will, is clear, I think, throughout. There's a through line.
Correct. There's a clear path of what I'm trying to produce, and the approach and the overall aesthetic and the feeling that I want someone to feel within the home and within the art. And I try to keep that true with it. So it is more of a minimal approach, less clutter, simplifying, knowing your negative and positive spaces, knowing how important those things are, and, trying to find, I guess, the beauty in simple things. That's just it, taking the purity of everything. And that's kind of with architecture and art, and being a fine artist in terms of being abstract. It's really about the purity of your technique, the materials that you use, your actions are pure. And I think that's what makes up great art, when it's pure.
Would you say the majority of your architecture clients are also collectors of your work?
Yes. So, it came about, years ago. I was kind of hesitant to like push on to my art with them, but no, now, the last decade, basically every client's had a couple pieces of art.
How does that make you feel when you finish a project and, the blood, sweat, and tears of a project is, of course, these things are not easy. They're very stressful, high stakes game. And that, you get through it, you get done, you're finished, people move in, they're happy. They're living in your creation. They're living with your art. How does that make you feel?
It is. Yeah. Just like you said, it's the process of getting there to the finish line. is a tough one. So,
It's a
so the last
contact sport.
Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of almost don't really savor it or until after the fact of maybe months down the road. All my clients wind up being my really good friends. A lot of them are summer homes, and they allow me to use the houses anytime I want. They're very thankful. They're hugging me. They always want to come over for dinner. So, that was what I wanted. I wanted to have a relationship with people. So that's why I like designing, working with clients. And again, painting. Painting is amazing when, you have clients buying your paintings because they're all so happy. I mean, they come to the studio, they're ecstatic. Oh my God, I get letters, and that's awesome. It's a good feeling.
Do you know off the top of your head how many paintings you've sold in your professional career? Who's keeping score?
Yeah. I don't know, maybe 500.
It's incredible.
So, I mean, obviously this last 2 years, over 200. So it's been great. I can't even keep up.
I mean, I have to ask, how the hell do you find the time to paint? I mean, when you're building homes, I also believe you're a husband and a father. How do you find the time?
Well, it's taken years of being efficient with time.
Okay.
And, I had a professor who taught me very early on. He's like, don't be building these huge canvases and spending all this money and being hesitant on finishing them. Just take a simple piece of paper and draw every day and paint and just keep working your craft. And so I've created an environment where my process is very efficient. I have people helping building the stretchers, paying them, building the canvases, getting things set up for me. My studio is very accessible. And so, my limited time of painting is done very effectively. So when I paint, I get stuff done, so I have to work evenings, weekends, early in the morning, an hour here, an hour there. So, there's that adage. I've heard people say, well, I have kids, so I can't paint, or I've got to work, so I can't, dance or do this. And I just was never one of those people who would ever use and say that.
Right. Well, it seems like you've been effective at designing a system for yourself or a workflow that works for your lifestyle.
With the new year coming up, though, I am going to stop taking on projects for designing homes and building them for a while. I don't know if that will be indefinite, but it's definitely going to be on the back burner now, so I can focus.
Is that going to be hard for you to walk away and say no to projects that that come your way?
No, I'm actually looking forward to it.
Okay, you need a break?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it as like a retirement of like moving on to a new career. So I'm actually like feeling like I accomplished something that has been very difficult, and I've done it. So I'm ready to move on from it and kind of pat my hands and move on.
Well, your architecture work has been critically acclaimed. You've been published. You've won a lot of praise for your work. I believe perhaps one of your more well-known projects was the so-called church project, correct?
Correct. Yeah, changed for people who don't know. I renovated a church into a home, and it's been published over 100 times. I've been awarded awards in China, and I've been in Architectural Digest, Spain, Mexico, Russia. And
so tell me about that project. You renovated a church. What does that look like? I mean, how the hell does somebody own a church?
I think what really caught everyone's attention about this church, it's because it wasn't like you renovated a church and you made it into still a church, and it had like an old fireplace, and you kept it that cliche of like old materials in there. And what really made this church stand out to everybody, it was so contemporary and current with today's design, but in the envelope of a church. We still kept the stained glass windows, but we were able to like make a space that was very large, actually shrank it where we added more rooms, but enlarged it in other areas so it didn't lose that lofty feel. So to be able to accomplish something that's very current in design, that was fluid, that worked, that didn't look gimmicky, it just really caught everybody, because a lot of people have done churches, and we got contacted by many publications in Europe, obviously, because of the churches out there in London. And they were just, people were just blown away with it. So it was kind of one of those, it was a perfect playground for me because that's how I work. I work contemporary. I work with what is current and what I'm feeling.
Right. Now, did you have to pitch for that project? Did you have to win that project?
I had someone come in actually that she originally hired another designer or an architect, and she wasn't happy with the direction he was taking. And so she wanted me to meet with him. And they were very well established, more established than I was by far. And I met with him, and he looked at me and he says, we discussed the project a little bit, and I was like, well, why don't we do this, or what about this? And he looked at me and goes, we're done here. I go, what do you mean we're done? He's like, yeah, I'm done working with her. And I'm like, does she know this? So
why are you telling me? Have you told her?
I left there thinking he's like, yeah, we're done. So he was, again, he was
a little salty.
Yeah. And he didn't want anyone else coming in telling him what to do. And I had no idea that conversation was going to go that way. And so that was it. I got the contract right after that and worked away on it. So
yeah, awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how long does a project like that, this is not a fair question because every project is different, but how long did that project take? Was that a 2-year project?
Yeah, they're 2-year projects, 2.5, from doing the drawings to, depending on what city you live in. Obviously, if you're in New York, you would know the difficulties of getting a permit there and that process and lengthiness. But, my projects do take longer. 1.5 years, you have to really know the home and know the person and the climate and then what you're trying to produce. And there's only one of me. So I have people helping, but in the end, it really takes all my time because all those little design details, I can't really give them to anybody else. It just requires my time. So
you said most of the homes you typically work on are 5,000-6,000 square feet. Is there sort of an average budget, or are you working with $5 million, $2 million? Does it just vary all over the place?
Well, in the Chicagoland area, homes like that are in the $2 million range. $1 million renovations. I can do a lot with $1 million. More so because we design build everything. So someone's $1 million, I could, it may cost someone $1.3 million where I can do it for $1 million, just because we custom make all the cabinetry, we make the furniture, I have
again, you're more efficient
trades. Yeah. So I have resources that allow us to get things done for cheaper, less money.
And you sort of come by this honestly, don't you? Didn't your father build homes?
He was more in the commercial building. He did build some homes. He per se wouldn't want to work with a homeowner in construction.
And now you know why.
Yes. It's difficult to work with a homeowner opposed to when you're working with someone who owns a business. It's a different process.
Professional developer.
But plus, the time frame. It's got to be more pragmatic. You have this much time. This is what we're going to spend. Okay, let's move on and get completed. Obviously, with a custom project, it changes. Which that's the whole. Even if I don't like that, that's the whole beauty of it. That's why it takes time. Custom homes, because you do want to make it custom. And some of these answers you don't have until you're in there and thick of things.
Where does your artistic gene come from? Was your dad artistic?
He's more like an engineer, pragmatic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he did architecture drawings. And so in the building process, it was, in the hard working, it was him. But my mother she's more the artist and free spirit. So
you seem to be a pretty good blend of the two. You've got the left and right brain happening.
Right. And which is a rarity.
Yeah.
So that's why I think I've been successful as a painter,
sure,
an artist, is because
so many artists are challenged, right, in terms of being rational about their business, and your artistic career has probably benefited from your ability to be pragmatic and rational as an artist, which is a blessing. Right?
Yeah, I think if people are trying to figure out in whatever craft they are, or whether they're an artist or an architect or dancer, art is in everything. It's just art is about doing something well and understanding it and figuring out what that value is. And then once you figure out somewhat that value is, then how do you obtain that value in terms of monetary reasons so we can keep on doing it? So, what I've done is try to be in everything. What does that mean? Well, get on Instagram, get on Twitter, email people, send out newsletters, do a show at a library. I don't care where, a coffee shop, do charity, do some advertising, work in a gallery. So I do everything. So all those things. I do some charity work. I get paintings away. I do free seminars. I help out with children. I donate my time with the architectural projects. I do advertising. I'm on Instagram. And I find, now it's working. Like I get calls, 1 month it's, someone found the ad. Another month I did a charity event, so they found me from there. The gallery then sells paintings, and then I sell paintings on my own. So I work with designers. So I think there isn't, an artist, there is no one formula. You just have to be out there in everything you can.
Well, the one thing that I've appreciated about your career and watching your career, because you and I have known each other for many years now, you've always been, at least in my assessment, quite thoughtful about your choices. You typically know where you want to be, where you want to go. You sort of break those goals down into smaller goals and steps, and you execute well. But you're incredibly thoughtful. You're not, at least in my assessment over the years, you're not impetuous. You're not reactive. You tend to be pretty intentional about your choices.
Yeah, I'm not all over the board. My choices since from basically high school through college have all been towards one goal. Not that goal has always been apparent, but it's always been apparent of, now it's always been to try to be creative and to produce stuff and just try to be, I'm trying to add something. What am I trying to create? I'm trying to create a work that people can gravitate towards. I want to say something, Do
you think the current state of your career, are you sort of on track? Do you feel like you're on track, or or are you ahead of the game? Are you behind? How do you feel about where you're at right now?
If I was talking about building homes in the architecture and world and design, I'm way ahead, for my age.
So your current state around that, you've exceeded your expectations. You wouldn't have imagined being
right. And most of them are, are celebrated when they're much older, upper 50s, 60s and stuff like that. Yeah. So that has succeeded, farther than I could even imagine. I didn't even imagine ever being published all over the world and going to China to accept an award. It wasn't even my vocabulary. And even now with the art, I didn't even know, it's something that I've been doing forever, but it's still naive about the art world. I don't think anyone knows the elusive art world. What is the art world, and what's the gallery? What's the artist? I think now, even being in the second year in Art Basel, I'm finding out we're the same. The artist and the gallery are the same. We have the same dilemma. Figuring out the public, where to go, what show to be in, which direction. Artists look up to the gallery, but the gallery is almost the same. They're just as lost as the artist sometimes. They're trying to figure out what show they want to be in and how much they should be spending for this, and are they going to be advertising? What artists should they have? Yes. Who's the next big thing, And so they don't have, as much as artists want to search for the answers with the gallery, but they don't, a lot of them are in the same boat as we are. So,
isn't that fascinating? I mean, it's statistically, right? I mean, 90% of small businesses fail, and most galleries are small businesses, and it's a struggle. And, to what extent do you feel like, what do your galleries do for you in your career? Like, what value add are they bringing? What are they bringing to the table for you?
Well, what I've been in galleries for the last 20 years, some smaller, some bigger, and at first one big gallery I was at was on Superior Street, which is in the River North in Chicago. And that was the street to be on. So I thought I made it. Yes, I'm 26. I made it. I'm on Superior Street. And then I got to really know the gallery and found out, they could be selling shoes. They didn't, it was just about selling a product, and they didn't really care about my work. They just wanted to make sales. They liked the work. They like art, but they didn't have the same passion I did. We didn't have the same beliefs. So I ended that. with them. And then I've been with other galleries that are small that it's just kind of brick and mortar gallery that people come on in and they try to create some clientele and show your work, and they're enthusiastic and they like art. But the galleries I'm with now are ones that show all over the world, and they do these big shows and they really push the art and they have more clientele and their outreach is further than what I have at this time. So it's opened my eyes to a whole new, opportunity to be, selling all over the world is amazing. Having clients in Germany, people buying your work in Paris is awesome. So I would never have that without them. So I find them very important. It's a partnership.
Do you feel as though that you guys can grow together moving? Where do you see your career 5-10 years from now?
So that's a good question. Two-part question. One, if you're looking for a gallery representation, or if you're looking for a job anywhere, that's a good question that maybe a lot of us don't answer or ask ourselves. Is that career path, if you're going for another, getting hired from a company, are they going to grow the same way you're going to grow? Is the gallery I'm with now going to be the end all gallery? I don't know, because I plan to keep growing faster and faster, and if the gallery can keep up with that, then yeah, I would stay with them. But we have a great relationship, and we discuss our paths together. And I'm assuming that if our paths, would change, we would have that conversation. Which, in terms of where I see myself in 5 and 10 years, just keep on pushing the envelope to make better art, and then being seen in the right places and understanding the art world a little better, I guess, and making, being seen, but try to start getting to some museum shows.
So for those young artists out there who sort of aspire to be where you're at, as you've already sort of alluded to, the art world can be a sort of opaque kind of world. It's part of the reason we're doing this podcast is to help demystify it and help educate folks. I mean, so from a nuts and bolts perspective, your relationship with your galleries, is that a contractual relationship? Is it an exclusive relationship?
It's not, but it is in a way. Like, depending on what level you're at, it is a contractual agreement in terms of you're not going to be showing in 2 cities with 2 different galleries. That's just, that's not going to happen unless you're with some small galleries that don't care. But
and just to be clear, your galleries now, we would consider them mid-sized galleries, right?
Yes.
And or sort of mid-career galleries, what have you. And so you're not going to, your New York gallery is your North America gallery, right? You're not showing in Chicago.
Correct. Okay. I have one gallery that I work with in Chicago, but on a limited basis now, just because I've established myself on my own in Chicago, where I don't need the gallery per se. I'm not saying that in a negative way, but people in Chicago, in my hometown,
and you're still selling art through your studio. You don't have to sell through your gallery in New York.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. And they know that,
Right.
So.
And then the gallery in London that you have was introduced to you through the New York gallery?
New York gallery knows them well, and they, over the course of the last 2 years, been seeing my work, and they approached the New York gallery and asked if it was okay.
Okay, so there's some understanding there and an agreement, sort of informal maybe. Agreement.
Correct. Yeah. A lot of these galleries that travel all over to these shows know each other. They've been doing it for 15, 30 years, So they know, they have a relationship with them. So they know which artists are good, and they people who've been in business long enough try to respect each other.
Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing the split, the rev share with your gallery is 50-50?
It is. In general, it is. But I've been fortunate enough to be in a position where I actually get 60-40.
Yeah.
Due to how hard we work together and due to the sales that we have. So
they know you're selling.
We sell a lot, and so she wants to keep me happy.
Mm-hmm.
So
right. There's some controversy out there on social. I've noticed recently artists sort of pushing back against consignment sales and wanting galleries to pay up front, almost like a wholesale kind of deal, right? So, assuming more of the risk. I think a lot of artists out there feel, certainly young emerging artists, or even, maybe mid-career artists feel, based on what I'm reading in social, that they take on too much of the risk. They want galleries to take on more of the risk. How do you feel about that issue?
Well, for someone who, I'm on both ends of it, since I have a fairly large studio in Chicago, which is expensive, and I advertise and do the business side of like a gallery would. I know that stuff isn't for free. So a good gallery should be doing stuff like advertising and reaching out. They're not just having people just walk in. They have to have a gallery space. They have to turn the lights on. They might have other assistants that they pay, percentages with wise. So even though you think 50-50 is a lot, like when you do these big shows like Art Miami, Art Basel, they have to pay for the booth. So if they're spending $25,000 on a weekend, they have to sell a lot of art just to break even. And they're splitting it. So, if the gallery is not working for you, then it's not worth it. If they're thinking the art's like shoes that people are just going to come walk in off the street and just go buy, spend $10,000, well then that's not work. That's just the wrong gallery for you. So
right. You mentioned your presence on social. Have you sold art via Instagram?
Yes, it's been great.
Interesting. Talk about that.
I get people from all over, especially California. It seems like that's a great market for me. That's been selling quite a bit. Instagram, you get followers. And, I've had people, I have one client that's in Newport Beach, bought 4 paintings already.
Incredible.
Sight unseen.
They found you on Instagram.
Yep.
They contacted you. They DM'd you through Instagram. And you've since sold them 4 paintings.
Yep. I have a great, she's a friend now, but she's from Oregon, and her husband, they flew out, they commissioned a piece and actually flew out to Chicago for a weekend, and they purchased one of the larger paintings, and that was through Instagram. So sight unseen, it's amazing, people spending big dollars without even seeing a piece of work or following.
How often do you post?
That's comes and goes depending how swamped I've been.
Yeah.
Let's say, of course, of the month, you want to, maybe 10 times, 15 times, depending on, how busy.
And you're posting images of your studio and your artwork, but you're also posting photos and images of your architectural work and the homes you're building.
Yeah. So my feed is, I guess, a real feed of real life. And I'm not creating content to put on there just to put it on there so it looks like it's so cohesive that I'm trying to get 1 million followers and that I'm going to get an advertiser. Some of it's raw. Some of it's with my child painting, my wife, me in the studio, stuff that I think that might be interesting of the process, showing the process of the work. And then some of it obviously is the polished when it's professionally shot with the architecture. So I'm hoping, again, I'm just trying to find stuff that's interesting in that process and share that.
So the work that's selling for you now is sort of the culmination of exploration you began many years ago, sort of a study on circles. Talk a little bit about that study and, where you started and how you got here.
So, what happened was in 2009, the recession hit in the housing market, and I was more into painting like classical paintings, the dark, rich browns and landscapes and still lifes. And I decided I needed to do something different. I said, I can do contemporary architecture and design that kind of stemmed on its own merit. I didn't need anything to, I guess, guide me, because I had my own guidance of how to design. And I'm like, why can't I do that with the art? It was always about the subject before, And so I took up a bowl and I'm like, well, let me just trace over a bowl and make some shapes and circles and just see what can come out of this. And I'm like, oh, that looks pretty interesting. I was getting kind of all white paintings, kind of like a grid shape. And then I sold a couple of them just kind of a fluke not for a lot of money, but women thought they looked like bubbles or they made them happy. So I'm like, okay. So then I just kept on experimenting with that process, thinking, well, maybe I can paint these circles to bubbles, let's say, to create a composition that could be read like figurative or read like the landscapes. And so then I started experimenting with that. But then again, you could still see somewhat a subject. So in terms of finding yourself as an artist, it wasn't still all about the process. It was still, subject was in there. There was still some idea there. It wasn't as free. Still somewhat controlled. And then I was working with a gallery in Chicago, and they said, well, we'd like your circles, but we want you to do something a little different. So I had started like 6 of those circle paintings. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with these? So I started painting over them, scribbling over them, and just scratching out the circles.
Sure.
Which was a freeing moment because here it is. I'm just playing around, just scribbling and covering up circles, and some of them were coming through, and it was like, oh, these actually look pretty good. And so then I continued that process without it being so controlled. So right now the process is very loose. It's almost like Saitambli. It's, the gestural movements are like dance or music notes.
Mm-hmm.
The technique is never ending. It's like they're like metaphors. Nothing has to be one thing in the painting. So I get to experiment with all the different tones of colors from one painting to another. Each painting looks different. I mean, there's the same fluidity in the painting. There's definitely a sense of style that's in each piece. But, you're not going to see 4 green paintings with the same mark on them and look like I just did the same painting but changed something in the corner.
But success that you're having is sort of a double-edged sword, right? Because you found something that is working. It's working for you. You're enjoying it. It's working for your gallery. They're selling and people are buying and loving it. I mean, do you feel pressure to sort of stay the course, or are you cautious about changing? I mean, do you want to innovate? Do you want to move forward?
No, I am moving forward, and I am experimenting. This last show in New York, I say out of 12 pieces, when you're working, I work on a body of work at one time. It's like writing a book, right? You kind of write chapters of each book or a character, let's say. So I had 2 of these paintings that are a character, let's call them, they were rambunctious and they were livelihood. And so the gesture marks were bold and there was tons of color, and I call them confetti.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the kind of characters that I was able to experiment with, is to kind of let myself go and let to see where this painting took me. And so out of that body of work, there were different characters, and I pushed them different ways. And that's what the beauty is, to be able to have these shows and to work with galleries that are showing your work constantly, is that you were able to keep on producing stuff and seeing a reaction and see what people think. If they like it, don't like it, And I do hear stuff from my gallery, and people, they're like, she's like, well, I want the light ones. And then she's like, oh, I want really bold ones. So then she's like, at the show, I have both light and bold, and they all both sell. And she's like, well, maybe some people really like lights and some people like both. I'm like, yes, they do. Like, I see people buying all different kinds of stuff, So, I'm not one thing.
Right. It's not one size fits all.
Right. So
would you say your practice is, or in terms of how you evolve and how you grow, is it an evolution moving forward for you in terms of sort of, innovating through a more iterative process? Or do you see yourself sort of being revolutionary and saying, you know what, I'm throwing all that out and I'm just starting with, something 180 degrees different?
No, because my journey and my work is a journal, and you can't skip that page that quickly.
Chapters in a book.
You can't, because they build from one to another. Mm-hmm. So just like I said, the circles came into me covering the circles, to the squiggles, I didn't do the circles and boom, I'm all the way to the squiggles. I needed some of those circles were still there, So
right.
It's a general process of, manipulating those techniques.
Mm-hmm.
It's like dance, or like maybe jazz music. Jazz music would be more representative of maybe an abstract painting. Mm-hmm. So jazz music could be fluid and combustible and soulful, and
right.
And so the art is the same. It's like it's improv.
Yeah.
And so depending on that evening or that day or that audience, the work can change. And that's what the beauty of this technique that I've came about. It's never ending. Like I don't see an end into it. There's no one thing to it. So it can change daily, weekly, as my story changes.
Now, as an artist, what do you need to feel safe to create? You know, we had an artist on a while back who was saying that the secret behind his success was his wife, you know, because his wife supported him in so many ways. And she didn't necessarily even like his art. She just liked the fact that he was creative, and she liked that fact that he was an artist, what have you. And he gave her all the credit for sort of creating the space for him to feel safe and be able to create. But, you know, what do you need to feel safe so that you can create?
Well, I think, as I maybe bring up my professor again, but he always said artists needed to be two things. And what he meant was just kind of what you're saying. How do you be safe? So a lot of artists are, you know, either they work in a restaurant and then they paint, or, you know, or dance, or they act, or, you know, or they have a professional job like they're a teacher and then they have summers off and then they paint. So you need to be able to be in a place where you're not 100% always pushing the envelope in anything. And like business, they call it 80-20. 80% you know, 20% is new. So if you're working in a world that's 100% new all the time, you're at risk. So as an artist, being safe is, I'm not creating work that I think is completely 80% safe that I know is going to sell, and then 20 is not.
Yeah.
But to be more, but I never really relied that the income from the art was going to be paying my bills.
Right.
So I've always had a balance between doing the design and architecture and then doing some painting, and they both complemented each other, and it allowed me to keep creating the work that I want to do. But in terms of like maybe a more micro comment would be, last year I was producing some very large works. I had about 12 of them started. What I mean by large, they're like 7 or 8 feet by 6 feet. And to me, they're one of my more beautiful works. But, you know, selling those works is much more difficult. And so, you know, after I was working on them for like 2 months, I'm like, well, you know, I got to make some smaller paintings too, because I'm just putting all my eggs making these big paintings, which is
different
great.
Price points. Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to make some smaller paintings.
Right.
So, you know, I've still worked on those paintings. I've completed most of them. Some of them have sold. But that body of work is going to be mainly for a solo show. You know, it's not going to be meant to sell. If they sell, that's great.
Yeah.
But that work, again, is not, those are difficult to ship. I can't just be shipping them to New York. There's the space that they require. So that's work that's, I guess, is the 20%. But I think it's one of the better works.
Yeah.
But I'm not relying on those things to make an income.
Right. How do you manage the stress? I mean, you know, I'm listening to you, and, you know, you've got a lot at stake. I mean, you've got clients, architectural clients, you're building custom homes. You've got galleries counting on you to create work. You're married, you're a family man. I mean, you're under a lot of stress. I mean, what do you do to manage that stress and keep your focus?
I wish I had the answer to that one. So recently, the stress has been a lot. But I guess instead of running away from the stress, is being older now is trying to figure out, one, how you manage that stress, but get the task done then. Like, so I try to figure out what is causing that stress and how do I solve it, opposed to just being 100% stressed over something, for instance. I try to, hey, do I need to send this couple emails? Do I need to call these people? Do I need to get this stuff? Well, then get that stuff done so then I can, you know, kind of rid the stress.
Take the pressure off.
Yeah. So, you know, I think, the anxiety of being an artist can be tough because you don't have that direction and stuff like that. But you just, you got to make those lists and you got to check them off.
Yeah. I can imagine that there are artists listening right now who are curious about how you manage your time, how you manage your workflow. You've got a lot of balls in the air. How do you approach time management in the course of a day and a week and a month?
That's the thing. You have to be a hard worker. So if you want to be an artist and be successful, the formula for me was you get up early. If you have to get up at 5, you get up at 5. You work 12, 13 hours, 15 hours a day. That's what it takes. I'm building, I'm no different than a laborer half the time. I'm building $2 million homes, and I'm not picking the garbage up,
Yeah.
I'm doing tasks that someone would make for a minimum $15, $20 an hour.
You're swinging a hammer.
Swinging a hammer. I'm getting it done. You got to take charge. So also you got to be smart with your time, be efficient, but you can't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
Right.
You got to work for everything you get, and it's, as they say, as we are in Florida, the older folks say tomorrow's not promised.
Right.
So there is no recipe that everyone can follow. I guess you work hard, you continue to work hard, and it's never going to end. You got to keep pushing it. You don't see Coca-Cola not advertising. They've made it, but they advertise. They spend a lot of money.
Right.
You have to do the same. So
sort of what I'm, listening to you talk, it's sort of is hitting me. You're sort of saying, accept responsibility, right? Accept responsibility for your goals, take action, execute, work your ass off, be faithful, right? Be committed.
I don't rely on anybody to make my goals come true. You want something, you want to be somewhere, you want to be on TV, you want to be famous, just go get it.
Right.
I don't rely on anyone and point fingers,
Yeah. Well, you also love what you do. And I think that's part of, the joy, hopefully, right? The joy of being an artist and being a creator is that the large part of the compensation comes in the doing and the making. And certainly you've got to convert into real dollars. You got to earn a living. But at the same time, hopefully you're enjoying the process, because at the end of the day, it might be a while before you're making that money.
Yeah, there was no guarantee, So, I guess a pivotal point in my life was, just about 9 years ago. 9 years ago, when the economy crashed, I was building houses and working with developers who, stole money, and I didn't get paid, and had a staff, and basically I worked everything to build this company, and then I had to let the staff go one by one. And as the year went by, you think next week's going to get better, and didn't. And it's like next 6 months didn't get better. And, I went broke. Just because, one, I had clients that owed a lot of money that didn't wind up paying. Projects didn't get finished. Banks weren't giving the money. And so I said, well, then I'm going to just be a painter. I'm just going to work. If I'm not going to make money, I'm going to paint. I'm going to try to enjoy some of my time then and paint.
Yes.
And while I was doing that, I didn't borrow any money. And I lived, I had a child at that time, and I lived in a small studio, got rid of my house I was living in, and I lived very poor. I had a hot plate, and I'm in my 30s with a child, and
single dad,
and struggling and finding myself, making barely any money selling a painting, maybe a couple paintings a year that year for like $1,500, just getting by. And I told myself, I'm not going to borrow any money. I'm not going to ask my family for anything. I chose to be an artist, and I'm going to see this through. And if this is going to show me if I really want to be an artist, this is what I have to deal with.
Yep.
And so I didn't borrow any money, and I lived true to where I was at. I didn't mask it by lying to myself. This is what the path I chose to be an artist. And at that time was being poor, struggling. But I figured if I could come out on top of that, I would know that I'm going to not be an artist anymore, not be a designer, not be an architect, and I'll choose another path. So,
yeah, that's incredible. What artists do you admire? Who inspires you?
If we go with everyone who would know, artists would be, a Picasso. Obviously that's a clear choice. Why would you choose Picasso? I'd say Picasso only because I didn't understand him And I would never say Picasso if you asked me 10 years ago. But after getting to really know his body of work and seeing how great of a painter he was, it wasn't that I loved the style of his paintings and stuff like that, but I loved that he was able to create work the way he wanted to, and he could destroy things and deconstruct stuff with his work, and his attitude towards the process without trying to appease anybody. That is what I would take from somebody. Obviously, in terms of classical sense, Caravaggio, that I really admire. I'm not into political art, so none of that stuff I would take from, like Jackson Pollock, although he's, obviously well known. I don't really take anything from his process as a painter. So, even though I may enjoy looking at some of his work, it's not something that I would take from into my studies.
Yeah.
So,
well, we're here at Art Basel. What have you seen here, or have you seen anything that inspired you?
I like the combination between the fine art with a little bit of the graffiti mixture.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I find it playful and funny. And if it's done well, then you see the fine art of the craftsmanship, how the paint is layered, the tones of the colors. I appreciate. And then the whimsical writings and letters and the thought process and that idea that it doesn't have to be this, beautiful painting, it's kind of more real. So those are the pieces that I kind of gravitate to.
There are several shows happening here. I know you haven't been to all of them, but which show was your favorite and why that you've attended?
I think Context so far, was mid-tiered artists that are more established, like someone like myself and like someone who's been around for 20 years, galleries that have been around for 15 or 20 years. So their body of artists are more established, but it wasn't to the high-end pretentious stage. Still fun,
right?
Current, abstraction, contemporary. So, and then we got a chance to go into Art Miami, which is connected to Context, which has more blue chip artists and stuff like that. That's more higher tiered, closer to Art Basel. That, again, had some enjoyable work.
What turns you off about Art Basel? Being here, all the shows, all the parties. I mean, what annoys you as an artist? What turns you off as you walk these shows?
I don't know if anything really turns me off on the show. I mean, I guess each one has their own critical eye of what they want to be seeing. But as this now, it's the second year around, seeing these different venues, they offer so much at different levels, and different levels for the artist, and different levels for the consumer. And, you never know what people want to see. So I think you need it all.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different eye,
right.
So,
well, yeah, I think part of the challenge for the art world and for artists is how do you grow the entry level marketplace, right? Like, how do we get people? Because there's way more supply of art than demand for art, right? Like artists. Well, I'm not saying it's good art. I'm just saying like there's just a ton of art out there, right? A glut of inventory that's being unsold. And I see some of these shows. I mean, we were at Scope earlier, and it felt like that was a show that was good for a lot of first-time buyers. People sort of coming into the art market for the first time. And I just feel like that's a huge opportunity for the art world to figure out how you get new buyers into the marketplace. There's way more art, original art out there, between $500 and $50,000, right? Than 50,000 and above, it feels like. And it's just like, what are we doing to bring new people into the marketplace?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we're saying we, but, what's the art world doing? I think the art world, tries to get people, all different types of people in. And that's why they have Art Basel is fascinating and great for everyone, because there is so many different venues and different tiered type of artists that you can see. So, like you said, Scope is a good one if, newer buyers or prices are lower. The artwork is not.
Well, but then you have shows like the Affordable Art Show.
Yes.
And that's like, it's in the name, right?
Yes.
It's like, please come new buyers and consider these young emerging independent artists who are making interesting art that you can afford.
What affordable means is these paintings are typically under 20,000. So affordable is in the $5,000 to $10,000, maybe $12,000 range.
Okay.
So maybe that's affordable some, but maybe not so much for others.
Term,
yes.
So if you could give your younger self advice, I mean, obviously you've learned a lot all these years. What would you tell your younger self?
I would just say continue the path that you're meant for. Be honest with yourself and your pursuits. And I can't say this advice I've taken yet, but it's hard to savor those moments of success.
Interesting.
Because, in this world of design, architecture, and art, you're never ending. So, I haven't been able to really sit back and savor some of the
Do you think that you need to? Do you think you need to be more sort of willing to savor moving forward?
I think so, yeah. I think for health reasons why.
Yeah.
It's something that you got to take a moment back and savor those moments and enjoy them, and not always be rushing to get to the next point. So this next year, that's what I plan on doing.
Well, next year I will check in with you, Linc, and see if you've done that, because a year from now we'll be here at Art Basel. We'll sit down and do this again. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds great.
All right, Linc Thelen, thank you for joining Not Real Art.
Thank you.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. Please be sure to like this episode and share it with your friends on social. And if you haven't already done so, please be sure to press subscribe and follow us on IG at Not Real Art Official. We appreciate the support. Sourdough out.